Greetings and welcome back to the channel. Eric's here this evening. You join me as I sit here on a chilly November the 1st evening with a cup of hot chocolate, because hot chocolate's my thing now. Well, yeah, that's hot. So yes, back in the room. So in my last video where I was like, I'm back, Nozza 2002 put up there about asking why don't I do a video about why I didn't choose to go with Daggerheart, why I've decided to come back with D&D 2024. So for those of you who haven't watched the previous vids from a few years ago, which is fair enough, I will do a quick recap. So I've played D&D since first edition back in the 80s, second, third, skipped the horror that was fourth, played Pathfinder first edition instead, and that's where the problem lies. Really enjoyed the D20 system, D&D and Pathfinder. We had problems with third edition in the fact that it was very power gamey, which is not how my chums and I like to play. We're not optimizers, and we're certainly not over-optimizers. And it did cause problems with one player that we had at the time who was very much an over-optimizer. And the sad thing is that after he left the group, not to do with that, it was real-world things, and we started playing Pathfinder, which we'd done for about 15 years. Actually, our characters would have put anything he built to shame, which is really, really bad. And we enjoyed it. But as we were coming up to 2020, I was getting a bit fed up with Pathfinder. I just actually started a campaign, only 3 or 4 sessions in before the pandemic dropped and we had to scrap it. But my issue with Pathfinder ended up being that actually I've got fed up of the overly complicated mechanical aspect, the fact that you can't play that game if you're not going to over-optimize. And I mean over-optimize. Pathfinder was brutal, and by the time you got to high level, which we liked to do, we've pretty much played every single adventure path that Paizo put out, plus some homebrew stuff, and we always play 16th to 20th level. You've pretty much got to have a PhD to run a character in that. I used to use a program on the computer, on the laptop, called Hero Lab. And without that, I don't think I could run a Pathfinder character past about 10th level. And that's giving it some, welly. So when we come back after the pandemic, I started trying to run a campaign, a homebrew one, and it started off all right, and then it started to flounder, and it started to, fall apart. And it got to a point where I had a player basically say, this isn't working, and he was right. And I felt that I had lost my mojo, which is the way I put it. And very simply, I decided that actually maybe the pandemic did it, because the only gaming I got to do during the pandemic, roleplay-wise, was actually one D&D 5th edition campaign that a friend of mine ran after I asked him to, after watching a video by the great Ginny D saying about, if you can't play in person because of the pandemic, play online. And I think the reason I hated it and why I came down with a bit of a negativity towards D&D 5th was because as much as I'm an introvert, massively so, when I'm role-playing, I want people at the table. I want the other person to bounce off of. And I think when it wasn't there, and you're just doing it through a set of headphones and a speaker, microphone, sorry, it's not the same thing. And being so used to Pathfinder, which was a very complicated system, I think it ruined it. So I decided to play for a year or so. My friend had been running all of the Rune Lord adventure paths, and we got the last one, and we played that through to 20th. I purposefully went for a bard, so I didn't have to optimize and power game. I could stand at the back, hide behind a pillar, and just sing songs. Yeah. But I started looking for a game system, pardon me, that was simpler, but not too simple. I don't like the look of most of the, like, what do they call it? OSR, old school revival, is it? Games that are out there. I can't think what they call them now. Thinking about it, is it like Shadow Dark and Castles and Crusades and all that sort of stuff? I took a look at it and just went, no, that's just, no, not me. And Daggerheart popped up on my radar, and I went, okay, this sounds interesting. People are talking about it being the D&D killer, which was obviously never going to be a thing. But it looked like a simpler, more interesting system. So I downloaded all of the playtest material. I got my guys interested. And so I ran kind of a little of a sandboxy thing. I had like a little thing set up with a town, did a crude map, what they gave information they gave me as per Daggerheart works. I added like their home nations to it, and I added stuff that they came up with their characters, and just did this little thing that could possibly tie into a larger campaign if I wanted to run it. And I actually quite enjoyed Daggerheart. The only problem I had is once we started playing it, I was not a fan of the lack of an initiative system. So if you are not familiar, Daggerheart basically goes, you don't roll for initiative, you treat combat the way you would do anything else. If you're having a conversation with an NPC or you're trying to rappel down that castle wall, you just say you're doing it. And the combat system works the same way. You just go, I pull my sword out and I stab him in the gillet. Gillet? Is that a real word, or I made that one up? You tell me. So, and then you just do it. And if it goes to a combat, the players decide who's doing what. They just jump in like they would if it was any other action, any other activity. And when they roll, and if they have like a hope dice and a fear dice, and if the fear dice comes up on a certain number, the games master, I forget what Daggerheart calls it, gets these fear tokens, and they can use the fear tokens to interrupt what the players do. So it's very much in the hands of the players. Hot chocolate. And it was fine, except I was finding that despite jumping in, I was just, you're capped out at something like 10 or 12 of these tokens. I forget how many. But no matter what I did, jumping in, doing abilities, doing stuff, because of the amount of dice the players roll, I'm sitting there with a permanent stack of this stuff. And it was like, am I just not being ruthless enough? Or is this a flaw in the mechanic that I need to write when I do my review for doing the playtest? And we had a couple of sessions of this. And then they dropped. And I did actually put that into the playtest notes. That, I just couldn't spend these things fast enough. Then the second playtest came out and they changed things. I'm assuming they changed things, A, because some people didn't like things, or B, they wanted to see how such and such ability worked once, and then they wanted to see how an alternate version might work. And the problem is that the alternate versions that we got in the second playtest were not fun. An example being one of my players was playing a Clank rogue, and in the first playtest, he took this like ability that said he kind of had, if he needed something like a crowbar or a bag of nails, or whatever, he could pull out a non-magical mundane item that they'd be wanting to use that they needed, and then it'd go back in the bag and disappear. And actually, I know some people might go, well, that's really strong. It's like, well, actually, no, it kind of works in a way, and I like that. But they changed the ability in the second one, and neither myself nor the player particularly liked what they did with it. I can't remember what they changed it to, but it wasn't very good. And we said this in the notes. By the time we got to the third playtest, they'd changed it again. Not that ability. I think they put it back to what it was originally. I think lots of people said, no, the pull out the random item was better. but they had made some changes to these fear tokens. And so to make you spend more of them, and I'm not, I appreciate I'm not the sharpest tool in the box, but I'm not daft. But they changed it. So not only did you have to spend a token, you had to have a token yourself, and then you had to spend like 2 other tokens. And I'm sitting there going, right, guys, when I want to do something, I'm just going to tell you, because you're going to have to tell me how many of these tokens, these bloody tokens, I've got to spend, because right now it's going vroom. It's going over my head so tightly that it may as well be shaving my head bald. And I just couldn't settle with it. It was like, this has gone from being a system that I was interested in to being something that I now consider an absolute nightmare. And isn't as good as I thought it was going to be, which kind of, I still feel that way. The player of the Clank character actually really enjoyed Daggerheart, though. So he's actually gone out and bought that big old first day sort of like release box set with everything. One of the other players has gone and bought it as well. And when one of the campaigns we're playing at the minute, I'm running D&D at the moment one Sunday, and another player is running the One Ring on the alternate. Whoever finishes first, I think it's probably going to be the One Ring. We're going to play Daggerheart, and my friend's going to run it, and I'm up for that. I'll play it. I'll give it a wibble. But I couldn't bring myself to GM it anymore. I just didn't like how the system actually played. It didn't feel like how it was originally presented. And this is another one. So I lost interest in the system entirely, how that worked. But now, since Daggerheart's release, I don't know whether you've noticed it or this is just something that I have, but a lot of those D&D, those roleplay channels that we watch, are suddenly raving about Daggerheart like it's the second coming. And it's getting on my wick. I watch something like Bob the World Builder, and all he seems to do these days, he doesn't talk about D&D, he just talks about, oh, you can copy this from Daggerheart. You can do this from Daggerheart. And it's just like, I'm sorry, dude, pick your game. If you like Daggerheart, make your channel about Daggerheart, but don't try and say you can pick this from this and add it to D&D and try and put down D&D. It almost feels like you're being paid now to do this. And that's how I feel about a lot of these channels. And why is that a problem, you might be asking? Well, the thing is this. I get turned off when people go on and on about something. I had the same thing with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I had the same thing with the Harry Potter films. Because the moment somebody, usually my friends, goes on and on about something, my interest in it just goes, boom. Because it feels like I'm being badgered. And that's how I feel about a lot of the channels are trying to basically over-promote Daggerheart at the minute. So they are draining any interest I actually had in that game. But why, I'm not here to downplay Daggerheart. I'm looking forward to playing it because that's going to be a different experience than trying to run that system. I'm looking forward to it. I've got a cool character idea that I've put through to my friend, to the GM, and I'm looking forward to it. But what made me pick D&D 2024? Pardon me. Okay. From the time I was about 9 years old, I wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. And I love Dungeons and Dragons, everything about it. I like the Vancian magic system. I like the alignment. I like all the sacred cows that we have in that game. I'm glad Thaco's gone. But, I like beholders. I like displacer beasts. I like, all that good stuff. I like Vorpal swords and +1 armors and, I don't like murder hoboing. I like, a bit different storytelling, but that. But I noticed one of the things I was doing with Daggerheart was basically going, so this is how I make monsters. So how do I make a Displacer Beast? How do I make a Beholder? How do I make a Rust monster? That was the big one. I sat there for ages going, well, if I take this and this, I can make a Rust monster. And I suddenly stopped and went, what the friff are you doing? That was me being polite because I almost swore then. What the friff are you doing? I said, if you want Rust monsters and you want Beholders and you want all that good stuff, just go out there and buy Dungeons and Dragons. There's a new edition coming out. Badum. So I started paying more attention to Dungeons and Dragons. And I decided, right, 2024 is not 6th edition. I think they should have done it as 6th edition, but that's a video for another time, I think. So I went out and I decided, right, looking through it, not everything, despite their claims, is backwards compatible. There's a lot of stuff that really isn't. It's 80, 90% there, but there's enough differences that you can have problems. So, plus there's quite a backlog, and I'm not going to go back library, and I'm not going to go back through all that yet. So I decided, right, buy the 3 books. And I'm going to run just material for 2024. So I made up a homebrew world. I spent, at the beginning of this year, pretty much, beginning of 2025, I spent about 5 months writing up my homebrew setting. I'm still doing it now. It's on like about version 4, and it's gone through like 1.1, 2. Whatever, 3.3. And I'm running 2 campaigns in it. Since that started, I've got my alternate Sunday game, which is Ghost of Saltmarsh, which has grown to 8 freaking players. Arg! It was 6 players, including someone from where I work who was desperately begging me to play D&D. So I said, okay, yes, you can come and be the 6th player. And if I'm honest, he's more of a liability to the party. I'll be honest again, he won't be coming back in a future campaign. His playstyle does not really gel with us, but I'm happy to have him in for one campaign and let him play, give him some of that. And so one of my friends, the one that's running the One Ring game for us on the alternate week, I said, look, why don't you come and join us? And then basically we've got 7, but one of you is an NPC. It may as well be an NPC for me. So we end up with 7. Then one of my friends who doesn't live locally but used to play Pathfinder with us years and years ago, he was down for a board game day at the game store. And someone said, oh, why don't you roll up a character? So he sat there for like 3 hours making a character. And then because someone had said this, he pulled up a chair and he started playing. And I'm like, oh no. And he did say to me afterwards, look, if you don't want me to, then that's fine, blah. And I said, you know what? Fudge it. Let's do it. So I've got 8 players in Ghost of Saltmarsh. I've just hit 9th level. And you know what? I'm having a blast with it. I am really enjoying it. And on Tuesday night, so that's an alternate Sunday, but every Tuesday I'm running another game set in this same world at the same time. I think the Sunday night group are about a week ahead of them at this point in time, but that's a homebrew campaign loosely based off of the Rise of the Rune Lords adventure path from Paizo, but completely reworked to be relevant to a major ancient villain in the campaign setting. The campaign's called The Last Hyborian. And that's only 6 players. And again, I'm having a whale of a time. I'm absolutely loving D&D 2024 to the point that I have gone out and bought a couple extra books. Probably backwards by the time I show you this. But Fizzband's Treasury of Dragons, I've got Monsters of the Multiverse coming. I'm going to pick up some new books like The Heroes of Farron and the Forge of the Artificer when it comes out in December. And I've expanded the species I'm allowing quite significantly. And you know what? With 2024, I'm having the most fun I've had with fantasy role-playing in 20 years, probably even 25 years. I'm having the sort of fun I used to have during second edition throughout the 90s. But this edition has also taught me. I have actually changed a lot from just, 6 months of running Dungeons and Dragons 2024. The way the system works, I have completely changed how I used to do things. I used to be one of those sort of DMs who was like, you've got to challenge your players. You can't give them an easy cakewalk. They've got to earn it. They've got to risk death. And you know what? I got to a point, one of my players in the Sunday game is playing a monk ranger. He's 8 monk, 1 ranger now. Warrior of the open palm, open fist. And he's going around, he basically smacks something, he knocks it to the floor, and then he pummels it with advantage. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm sitting there going, Jiminy cricket. And I was like, this is really strong. And I suddenly went, thumb, and I went, sod it. He's having a whale of a time. And he's only picking on one person, one baddie, and in one session, he basically somehow tripped a dinosaur, a giant T-Rex thing, into a house and crushing it. And it's like I suddenly went, you know what I've been doing wrong all these years. It was like a light bulb going off. It's like, but this system, the 5th edition system, went, let them do it. Let them be, the superheroes. Let them be the heroes of legend, which is what I'm sort of referring to. Let them do what they want to do. Let them have those Twinkie moments, And you know what? I'm enjoying it a lot more because they're enjoying it a lot more. They're not feeling like the game is out to get them or that this is a slog of a fight. If they beat up a bunch of goons in 1 round, 2 rounds, fine. I ain't got a problem with that. If they struggle with a boss, I haven't got a problem with that. The only sort of challenges I give them is if I class something as a legendary threat, which is anything with legendary abilities, lair abilities, or it's something like a big boss or a major dragon, then it can do like the massive damage, the outright wallop. Otherwise, normal monsters, normal goons don't do that. They haven't got to worry about that. But when they know, I tell them this is a legendary threat, and badang. And I'm making weird noises tonight, aren't I? It's probably the hot chocolate. But I found that I can relax with 2024. I can relax as the DM. So much more than I could under Pathfinder or 3rd edition or 2nd or 1st. I'm having a whale of a time. The players are having a whale of a time. And I just wish, in a way, I had this system 30 years ago and had that same epiphany. And it has made my games better. And I think even after just 6 months of running 2024, it's made my skills as a dungeon master better. And I'm loving it. So that, geez, I've gone on for like nearly half an hour here. Oh, sorry, guys. So that is why I ditched Daggerheart and why I picked up D&D 2024 and why I'm sticking to D&D 2024 and why it has reinvigorated me to sort of get this channel up again and get it going and try and do it right this time. Anyway, thank you, Nozza2002, for the topic suggestion. If you have any more, throw them down below. Anybody out there watching this, I know you're there. I can hear you breathing in the back. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Give me some ideas for topics you want me to cover. Anything, preferably D&D related. But hey ho, I'll see you in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up for my rambling. Definitely that hot chocolate. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Good gaming.